what Jesus taught about door knocking, I realize that door knocking, especially over the past, let's say 20 plus years, has fallen into disfavor. I completely understand why. I was in one of our schools of preaching recently. There were several students in the room. The door was shut, and I said, let's have an honest conversation. I know you guys go door knocking, and I want you to give me an honest answer. I don't want the canned answer. I don't want the answer the instructors want to hear, the answer that is the most optimistic, hopeful. I just want honesty. Hey, guys, what do you think about door knocking? Does it work? Do you want to go door knocking? They all kind of ducked their head, and they shook their head. And I think they were having a moment of honesty. And I said, well, why? Why don't you want to knock doors? And one of the students raised his hand and said, it doesn't work. They said, we've done this so long. They said, we get very little results out of it. We really work hard. I mean, we work all day. Sometimes it's hot. Sometimes it's taxing. We're just walking and people get upset and we try very best to reach, out to people. It just doesn't work. In fact, if I were to ask you this question right now, do you think door knocking works? I think a vast majority of you would say, no, it doesn't work. And now, did it once work? Is there a time in our country where we went door to door and we got pretty good results? And the answer is absolutely yes. Now, I am not taking away the fact that some of you have been converted because of door knocking. And I'm not in any way suggesting that door knocking is sinful. I'm not suggesting it never works. But as it is currently practiced among many of our congregations and sometimes our schools, it just doesn't work. And I would agree with that. In fact, I've been on many door knocking campaigns in the United States, and I walked away discouraged. I walked away, thinking I may have just wasted a lot of time. Now, can door knocking work? Now, that's a different question. And the answer is absolutely. In fact, if you'll rethink how you knock on doors, if you'll consider a different approach, if you'll consider maybe a different end game, I believe you'll end this lesson with a much more positive view on door knocking. Now, I want you to consider just very briefly a football game. And they send you in. It's, there's just a few minutes left in the game. Say you're at the 20-yard line, you got to get to the end. And the seconds are ticking off. You're out of timeouts. And finally, you end up with this kind of one play left. And what is the one play that every team's going to try to run? If their quarterback has the arm, you're going to do that Hail Mary and get it down the field. And you're going to try to make that one pass, get it into the end zone. And by some, just random luck, your wide receiver ends up and you win the game. All right, we've seen it happen. It's very rare. It's called the Hail Mary. In a result, you want to win. All right, it's one play. And I would have you consider that if your door knocking strategy is to go out into the community, knock doors, meet people, and convert them, that you're trying to do the same thing. All right, they don't know who you are. You are trying to make a 50-yard pass, 40-yard pass, a 60-yard pass, and you don't have an arm for it. Okay, it's almost impossible to accomplish. Instead of trying to make that one long pass, why don't you make a short pass, like a 5-yard pass, a 10-yard pass? Do something that is achievable. So the first thing I want to do is measure expectations. When you knock doors, if you want a successful door knocking campaign, success isn't determined by how many baptisms do we have tonight, or did they come to church? In other words, you go and invite people to a gospel meeting and they don't come, and okay, now that's not successful. Or you try to set up Bible studies and you don't set up any Bible studies, so now there's failure. I would suggest that maybe you're trying to throw a pass just way too far. In fact, Jesus said in Matthew chapter 10, verse 16, "Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore as wise as serpents and harmless or subtle as doves." So is there a strategy that does work? Well, why don't we throw the short pass? So what's the first step in the evangelism model? What's the first thing Jesus did? He reached out, or he seeks people, right? He's a seeker. Luke 19:10, we call that making contacts. So if you could knock doors and your only goal, your first goal, your primary goal, right, when you get to that door is just to make a contact, could you then be successful? I didn't say ask them to come to church, try to set up a Bible study, baptize them at the door. I think all of that is really unrealistic. So if you would create a strategy more in line with reasonable expectations, and that's what we've done in the School of Evangelism. So let's go ahead and go to Matthew 10, and it's when Jesus went door knocking, and it's just a limited commission, and Jesus is sending out his disciples, and he gives his disciples instruction. And for all practical purposes, they're going door to door. They're having a door knocking campaign. They're going from house to house, and Jesus says, okay, when you do this, here are some things you want to consider. So let's use the biblical text kind of as a foundation to launch forward and say, can we kind of do what they did? So what were the principles that Jesus provided, or the rules, if you will, that Jesus gave those disciples going out on a door-knocking campaign? Okay, here it is. Number one, Jesus provided them a method for going. He provided a method. And what was that method? Well, in Mark chapter 6 and verse 7, he called unto them the 12. He began to send them. Notice, so it's a sending method. The method is you got to send them out. All right, so in door knocking, we're following that. We're going out. No doubt about that. You gather the church together. Maybe you have a breakfast. Maybe you have a little training. You should always have training. Never send people out without training. All right, but how did he send them? All right, here it is, 2 by 2. So here's something I've learned from door knocking. Don't do it alone. Go 2 by 2. Not just 2 by 2, but let's strategically select who the two are. So we have found in our studies that a male-female team works a whole lot better than a male team. Now, if you two men show up, maybe one has a beard and one's kind of muscular guy, and you're knocking on the door, and behind the door is a young lady, and she looks through the peephole and sees you, she's not opening the door. I guarantee it. But if you got this sweet little young lady with you, maybe your wife or just one of the ladies at church, and she's there, and you just kind of step aside and you let them see her, not you, her, she's opening the door. And so go 2 by 2. Understand now there is also safety in numbers, and it's good having 2 people. So when we go door knocking, one of our rules is we always go 2 by 2, male, female, or adult child. So those are 2 good combinations. If at all possible, don't send 2 males, and don't go by yourself. There's ethical reasons not to go by yourself. People can accuse you of things you have not done, okay? And it puts you in a compromising position. So going 2 by 2 is biblical, and there's a lot of reasons for doing so. And in fact, you could go to Proverbs 11 and 14, where no counsel is, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. In other words, having more than one person is always going to be more conducive and get better results than going it alone. Get somebody to go with you. All right, now, Jesus gave them not only a method, but a message. In other words, when you go, you need to think about, okay, what are we going to say at the door? Okay, what am I going to do when I get there? Now, as you're going 2 by 2, we teach our teams as you're walking up, this is methodology. I always say kind of look around, notice your surroundings, be aware of kind of where you're at, notice signs that are out there, yard signs. You need to notice environmental conditions, notice a flower bed, a garden, a military insignia, political signs, flags, bumper stickers, cars, neatly kept houses, toys in the yard. Now, remember, you're going to that door, but you need to understand a little bit about the area you're in and kind of the message you're going to give. Now, we usually tailor our message just a little bit based upon those conditions. Well, let's talk a little bit more about that. Matthew 10, verse 7. And as you go, preach, saying the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Now, that's the primary, message, the kingdom. We have a kingdom message. When I go to the door, my message is a kingdom message. I want them to become members of the kingdom of God. How do we accomplish that? What is it that I can say? What is it that I can do to kind of get to that point? Now, we got a variety of tools that we use when we go to the door. Now, I'm going to give you some examples as I walk through this lesson, but let me give you some tools. When we go to the door, one of the tools we're going to use are compassion cards. And during that brief conversation, and you need to keep it brief, I'm going to say something like this. Hey, my wife Nicole and I, we're just kind of getting to know our neighbors, and we're Christians in the area, and our church wants to write some cards to encourage people that may be struggling. Do you know anyone that we could write some cards to lift their spirit, to help them, to help them have a better day? And just stop talking and let them answer. They're going to know somebody. Now, notice you're not asking for a Bible study. You're not threatening them in any way. You're just asking, hey, is there somebody we could write some cards to? You'll be surprised how many of them said, yeah, I've been going through a tough time. I'd love to get some cards. Or, I live with my mother. My mother's having a hard, or, my best friend or my neighbor, and you just made a contact. It's rare to find people that don't like someone to love them. They don't want someone to be kind to them. And you're asking, hey, could we just be kind? Could we send you some cards? And, in the mail, that's right. So you incorporate this into your door knocking. We've sent thousands of cards doing this. And it's amazing how many Bible studies result from this. Amazing how many people come to church. We didn't ask them to come to church necessarily. We just, hey, we'll send a card to you. And we send 2 to 3 cards per day, 3 to 4 weeks. That's the metric we use. We've studied this over the years and found that's a sweet spot. And so we're going to start sending cards. People love cards. It's not aggressive. It's more of an indirect approach. It doesn't make them feel cornered in any way, shape, or form. All right, so we have a message. Now, Matthew 10, verse 7, it says, you go with the message, preaching the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Now, so compassion cards is a way to bring that kingdom a little closer to them. All right, what about using house to house, heart to heart? That's a full 8-page colored magazine. It advertises your church on the front. It offers services that you might provide. You can advertise an event in the back. It's got great articles in the middle, all right? And perhaps you've been mailing it already. You've been mailing it for years. And here's how we would do it. I would say, hey, my name's Ron, my wife Nicole, and we've been sending this magazine, for several years to your home, and we're wanting to get some feedback. Do you recognize it? And what do you think of the magazine? And are there any articles that maybe you've enjoyed? And I might even ask this, is there an article or topic you would like us to address, that may be helpful to you? Well, once again, I'm going to get positive feedback. And there are going to be some people say, yeah, I enjoy getting it. I recognize that. I read it. Now, some people, they'll say, I don't remember getting this. Or some people say, I really haven't read it before. It's okay. Again, you're not going to get everybody, but you're going to get some positive feedback again. So we use house to house as a tool. So again, as we're going out door to door, we have it the door knocking edition. Did you know the door knocking edition is not dated? So you could order 1,000 of them and use it for several years. And it's a special edition designed for door knocking. It's to introduce the church. It's an introductory type issue. It's very well laid out. And the articles are well written. And it's a tool. You have it in your hand and you give them the tool. All right? Tools are important. It's a way to introduce the kingdom of God. Now, again, Matthew 10:7, we preach saying the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Well, how do you do that? Well, another tool we use is called prayer. Once again, it's not hard. So my wife and I have knocked on the door, and I might say this. I say, we come from a praying church. We love to pray for people. And this Sunday, we're going to have a prayer service. We're going to pray for some folks. Do you know anybody we can pray for? Now, just again, listen, because they're going to come up with somebody. They're going to say, I can use some prayer. I got some surgery coming up, or, I got a friend who's just had surgery, or, I've just lost my job. I'm having a baby. You could pray for my baby. You'll get all sorts of answers. Now, notice the conversation that's taking place. Not hostile. No one's cussing or cursing or trying to slam the door. They realize you're there. You're not pressuring anybody. You're saying, hey, could I pray for you? I remember one home that I went to. I knocked on the door, and he said, well, I'm an atheist. I don't really believe in God. But if you want to pray for me, that's fine. I said, I'd be glad to. So, even atheists like you to pray for them. Who doesn't want prayer? It's an expression of goodwill. It's an expression of kindness and love. Now, that's door knocking that works, and I'm going to show you at the end how I know that. I'm going to give you the numbers. I'm going to share the metrics. But I know cards work. I know house-to-house works. I know prayer works. You can pray right there at the door. Bow your head and pray, right? Pray for them. Then take their name to the church and pray, and maybe send a few cards letting them know you prayed. Now, all of that is done to till the soils of the heart, right? Your contact is sitting in front of you, so you've made a contact. Now you're prospecting, you're loving with kindness, praying for them. You're sharing the goodness of the church. You are practicing kingdom teaching right there. And it's important that you do that. Now, let's notice at the door, again, husband and a wife together. Husband leads that prayer. Yeah, I tell you what, I love it when teenagers go to the door and pray. Oh, man, you'll get their attention. It's a powerful tool. Let's go to another tool we have. What about community service? Maybe you have a community service sheet. We actually have some of these sheets in our curriculum. You can design it for your church, and you go to maybe a neighborhood where you realize there's some underprivileged families, underserved families. They need some help. So it's an area where you realize there are people here that need help. So when I'm talking to them, I might say, hey, our church is offering some community services. We're trying to give back to the community. And you show them the paper, and there's all these services listed on the paper. Some of it might be like mow a lawn, rake leaves, help with house cleaning, just a variety of things you have listed, right? Clear brush. And then you say, hey, is there something we can do for you? Well, man, I've been needing that tree right there. We've been needing it cleared, and I just physically can't do it. I don't have the equipment to do it, and I don't think I can. Hey, no problem. We got some guys at church. We'd be glad to do it. Well, how much money do you want? We don't want any money. We're just trying to help people. That is so kind of y'all to do that. There it is, right there. You've made a contact and you're loving people. We've done this time and time and time again. In fact, you can see some of the pictures of various things. We built our ramp. We've actually cleared trees and fixed mailboxes and cleaned houses and raked leaves. And we're just bestowing acts of kindness. We're doing good unto all men. We're showing them the love of God. We're reaching out. That's what growing churches do. Growing churches reach out. Growing churches don't sit in the church building and say, come on in. No, growing churches go on out. I think door knocking is very important. Now, I understand you're discouraged because maybe your idea of door knocking has not involved this approach. You've kind of knocked on the door and say, hey, we're having a gospel meeting, come, or we want a Bible study, or it's not working. And I understand why. They don't know you. Why would they come? I'm not discouraging gospel meetings in any way. I think we should have them. But I think you get people to come to gospel meetings a little differently. But this right here, door knocking, just to make a contact, to throw a 5-yard pass, anybody can do that. So here, are there other things you can do? Absolutely. What about new movers? People that move into your community. You know, house to house, heart to heart, we have access to people, their addresses and names, moving into your community. Do you know every week just about we have a baptism because of something like this? Somebody visits a church because of new movers. Now, we have a very complete and thorough training curriculum on how to effectively use new movers. Okay, we're going to have a gift ready. We're going to bring that gift to their door. We have a script, what to say, what not to say, how to approach the door. Let me just give you some ideas. So you got a name, and let's say the name is Joe Smith. And you and your wife, you got this basket. It's been prepared by the ladies at church. We'll just call it the spaghetti basket. And you're knocking on the door, but you have not gone through the training. So you're going to make some fatal mistakes, some big mistakes. And here it is. So you got their name because, again, it's been provided for you, and this is what you do. They knock on the door. Are you Joe Smith? You just moved here, right? Joe Smith? And they're going to look at you, and this is what they're going to do. Who are you? Where'd you get my name? What's on that sheet? How'd you find out who I was? As soon as that happens, you've lost now it becomes a defensive issue. You're defending how you got that name, and you're answering questions you have lost. Now, if you went through our training, you know never to do that. If you go through our training, you're going to know to approach the door like this, okay? Hey, my name's Rob, my wife, Nicole. We're neighbors. We know you just moved in. We've made a nice basket for you. Hey, welcome to the community. Where'd you guys move from? I didn't use their name. Okay, and I'm just trying to be kind. Now, in return, they're going to say, oh, man, that was really nice. Now, what's your name? Oh, I'm sorry. My name's Rob, my wife, Nicole. Where do y'all live again? Just a few streets over. And we just like to welcome our neighbors, our church. We come from a church. They put these little gift baskets together, and we just like to give them out to new folks. Man, that was so nice of y'all to do that. And, hey, where'd you guys come from? Well, we just moved from California, or we just moved from Texas, or wherever, right? And now you just start a conversation. Don't be surprised if they ask you to come inside, and you sit down and get to know them. And you might say, hey, our church would like to send you a few cards just welcoming you to the community and introducing ourselves. Is that okay? Oh, well, that'd be fine. Okay, that's the 5-yard pass. That's what we call success. And so Jesus provided you a method. He provided you a message. And we never go to the door empty-handed. In new movers, we take a basket, but we have materials. And he commanded them that they should take nothing for their journey save a staff, and their feet be shod with sandals. So in other words, Jesus said, hey, here's what you need to take. All right, now, there are things you shouldn't take, And I've learned that through the years. I used to show up with a backpack, and I'd have all this stuff in my hand. I was kind of like an encyclopedia salesman. You show up and all this stuff, and when they open the door, like they're looking at, you're about to fall over because you have all this stuff. I almost have nothing in my hand. I have no backpack. I basically have just the tool I'm going to use, all right? And I'm just going to have a conversation with them. And so there's a lot of tools that I use. I'm prepared, by the way. I come prepared, all right? And I'm prepared, not over-prepared, but with the tool that I need for that day. So if I'm coming to the house and it's going to be just a time for prayer, I just might have a writing utensil and a piece of paper so I can write down the prayer request, maybe a contact card. If I'm offering community service, I would have the community service sheet just for them to look at. But there are other tools. Again, have that contact card because you got to find out, who are they, where they live. You already know where they live, but you need to just find out a little bit about them. Don't interrogate them. And you might leave a tool, like a gift card. I love the Christian gift card. That's actually a Bible study. You can leave with them and say, hey, here's a gift card. It's a little bit about the Bible. If you scan the QR code, you'll love it. And we may have another card with video lessons on it, QR codes like doesn't matter, believe the Bible, back to the Bible, where do you go when you die? There's great door hangers. If they're not home, it's not a failure. Leave that door hanger. Don't leave the gift. Leave the door hanger. House to house, heart to heart. You should have some tools, some things that you're going to utilize. I heard this years ago, never go to the door empty-handed. Always have something that you can give them, something that you can leave with them if they're home or not at home. And so Jesus said, hey, here's some things you need. But notice he also said, here's some things you can leave. So I think we can take some lessons from that. There are some things we don't need, and then there's some things we do need, and just take the bare minimum and come to that door prepared, all right? Jesus provided materials, and those materials are important. They help you. They leave Bible studies with them or opportunities to learn and opportunities to connect at a later time. So you're prepared, and again, don't be overly prepared. Let's go to the next one. Jesus gave them a manner. Now, I want to talk a little bit about how you approach the door. So I said earlier you should make observations, right? And in Matthew 10:12, and when you come into a house, salute it. In other words, be respectful. So again, as I'm walking up to a house, I'm looking for insignias, flags, bumper stickers, yard items, because that's my intro. And I want to salute the house, greet the house. I'm just not going to show up and say, can I pray for you? That's a little bit too direct. Let me give you an example of what my wife and I might do. So I knock on the door, and again, I'm going to stand back from the door. I'm not going to stand right over the door. I'm going to give them what we call breathing space. I may take 2 steps back. I'm usually not going to walk through the yard or walk up the driveway. And I also recognize this. As soon as you walk on their property, they're listening to you and they're watching you. There is surveillance everywhere. So now's not the time to say anything derogatory. Now's not the time to make fun of something you see. Now's the time to be respectful. So I knock on the door. And if they have one of those video camera things, I never touch that thing. I just knock on the door because I really want to talk to them in person. All right? And so I just bypass it. I just knock on the door. Now, if you say, well, Rob, what if it has no soliciting? I don't solicit. I go to the next house. You say, well, technically, Rob, you're not soliciting because, listen, if it says don't solicit, they don't want to talk to you, so now's not the time to make them mad. There are plenty of other houses for you to knock on, so we respect the wishes of the community. If they do not want you there, we'll find another way to get to them. There are other ways to bypass, but we are not going to make people mad. Now, if I knock on the door and I take my step back, they open the door. I've got limited seconds here to make this right. So I'm going to say, hey, my name's Rob, my wife Nicole, we're Christians, and man, we're neighbors. We just were walking down the road, and you got the most beautiful flowers. And I can tell you spent a lot of time working on those. Can you tell me more about them flowers? I can tell. What kind of flowers are they? Or I might say, man, I noticed your flag out there. You always have this flag, and man, we need more patriotism in our country, and I appreciate you showing respect. I saw that bumper sticker. It looks like you were in the Navy. Oh, man, yeah, I went into 1975, and I was on this ship and watched them just light up. You notice I'm asking questions based upon things I observe, okay? If I see a lot of toys, my favorite one as I walk to a house to show respect, to salute it. In other words, to show honor, to show kindness, is the pet. I love pets. If a pet comes to the door, I'm immediately going to switch my attention to the pet. Hey, I love that dog. Well, what's the name of the dog? And they're going to say, oh, it's Fluffy or Ruffles or Oakley or whoever. What kind of dog is that? Tell me about how long. Oh, wow. Talking about a discussion. I've got a dog. You can have a discussion for a long time with pets. What are you doing? Breaking the ice. You're showing a little bit of respect. I didn't show up and say, hey, would you like to have a Bible study? Of course, that is not going to happen. I don't show up and say, can I pray for you? That's not going to, you just met them. Give them a few minutes. And then after I take those few minutes, I say, oh, by the way, we go to a local church down the road and we're praying for people this Sunday at church. Do you know anybody we can pray for? Now, you see, when you approach it like that, you're going to get much better results. You just are. So I would suggest that when you go door knocking, that you think about and you even train for the situation. Be wise as serpents. In other words, practice. When I go out door knocking, I'm always going to train the students. I work with schools of preaching, and sometimes we have practicums where I can take the students out and we can practice. I will practice in the classroom. Then I take them out. They have a very different reflection on door knocking when we're finished because they have seen door knocking work. So let's consider the manner. Okay, Acts 2:47, praising God and having favor with all the people. You want to have the favor of the community. And if you are obnoxious, okay, if you ignore the no soliciting sign, especially this one, this is the sign you should never ignore. Okay, the sign that says, baby in the house, mother may be feeding. You upset a mama with a new baby, you are done. She will get on her community Facebook page, and she'll tell the entire community, hey, these rude Christians are here. It's all over. They will chase you down, okay? They will get, you'll find, I actually witnessed this. A mother put her child in the car and chased down the Christian who knocked on their door for waking up their baby. Don't do that. Respect the sign. Assume they see you. Assume they hear you. Find common ground to talk about and have a 2 to 3 minute conversation. Now, if you can do that, your success rate goes up exponentially. If you ignore that and you just go it alone, and I promise you're not going to get good results. So Jesus gave them motivation. So what's our final point here in Matthew chapter 10, the limited commission? What is the motivation? Why should you knock on doors? Well, may I suggest that there are people out in your community that if you don't knock on their door, it's the only way you're going to reach them. They're not going to go to your social media page. They're not going to visit. They don't know anybody. So door knocking primarily reaches the unchurched. Matthew 10:13. And if the house be worthy, let your peace come upon it. You want to bring peace to people that really don't have it. You want to try to bring the church to people who are unchurched. You want to bring Jesus to people who don't know him. You want to reach out to the people that need Jesus, but they don't know they need him. Now that's door knocking. That's why we door knock. We want to bring peace, the peace of God that passes all understanding. I want to bring that. I want people to see that. They're not going to see it unless you go to them. There are literally people living in your community. The only way you're going to reach them is to go to them. Now, I know these are cold contacts. They take a lot of patience, a lot of work, a lot of effort, but we have seen hundreds of people through the years obey the gospel because of good door knocking. House to House, Heart to Heart has a door knocking day every year when we encourage every Christian, in fact, we do it jointly with World Video Bible School. We do it with Apologetics Press, Gospel Broadcasting Network. We're encouraging people, hey, let's go out there and knock some doors. And we have hundreds of churches that participate. Baptisms have happened, but of course, we don't start with the baptism. We're going to walk our way through the process. Romans 10:15, and how shall they preach except they be sent, as it is written, how beautiful are the feet of them that preach the gospel of peace. That's the purpose of the gospel, to bring peace with God and man, to bring peace to homes, and bring glad tidings of good things. And so that's what we're trying to do. So yes, Jesus did address door knocking in a sort. He's kind of giving you some principles. We can apply them, and we can be much more effective in our door knocking. And don't be surprised when you're knocking a door that this might happen. We've had it happen. I remember we were in Rome, Georgia. Matt and Ashley Walling were there, and we found a lady, and she said, I sure would like to know more about the Bible. I said, well, man, we'd be glad to do that with you. Really? I said, sure. What time works best for you? So we showed back up to the house. We started the Bible study. Now, I didn't ask for a Bible study. She asked us. And if you get out into the community, you're going to find there are people out there that would love to know more about the Bible. In fact, one of the strategies you can use is actually just the Bible strategy. And I can go to a door, and after I go through the introductory, I say, hey, my wife and I, we're bringing Bibles to people this week. And we know that there are people out here that don't have a Bible, and our church is offering free Bibles. Would you like a Bible? You'd be shocked how many people would say, yes, I'd love a Bible. Well, ma'am, sir, is there anything that interests you in the Bible? Is there a subject that you might want to know more about? Be glad to share something with you about it. Oh, again, there's opportunities. Certainly are. Matthew 10:14, whosoever shall not receive you or hear your words when you depart out of that house or city, shake off the dust from your feet. So if someone is rude, and it will happen eventually, even using these strategies, you're going to reach that rude person. What should you do? Dust off your feet and keep going. You don't quit. There are people that need, and in fact, there are people watching this video right now that you would not be a Christian if people quit. So you need to knock doors. Do it as often as you can, but at least once a year. We'd suggest, once a month if you're able. There are good churches doing this on a regular basis, and people are coming to know Jesus. I know it can be scary, but if you'll follow these principles, fear not. In fact, Jesus said, fear not in Matthew 10:26, Matthew 10:28, Matthew 10:31. You know why he says don't be afraid? Because faith and fear don't go together. Have faith in the gospel. Realize that if you'll be kind and good to people, most people will return your kindness and goodness. But if you just walk up to people and you don't treat them with the respect they need and the kindness that they deserve, if you don't practice the golden rule in door knocking, don't be surprised if they're rude. Don't be surprised if they may say some hurtful things. But I'm saying, please don't be afraid. If you'll be like Jesus, you're going to find people have honest and good hearts, and you can bring them to the cross. Oh, we love to knock doors. We so enjoy getting to meet people and be around people and help them to know the goodness of the Lord. Oh, a good door knocking strategy is have the motivation of faith and not the motivation of fear. And then you'll see people come to Christ. So the question as we end, this is the question I want. Here we're finishing the lesson, is does it work? Well, I'm going to let these numbers be your decision point. We've gone really all over the nation. We've gone from North Carolina to Illinois to Tennessee, Georgia, Texas, and we've employed these strategies. Can I go over just a couple of the numbers with you, share with you? I want you to look at the percentages. That's where I want you to focus your attention, because those percentages, they are powerful. These are what we call the success rate. In other words, when we go door knocking, do we get success? Now, I'm going to run through some of these. I just want you to focus on the percentages on the right-hand side or on this chart. What you're going to see is what we did. What was the strategy we used? You'll see cards, new movers, house to house, community service. Look at those percentages. That's the success rate. That's success rate. Let me give you another one. Here's another one you can look at. Look at the success rate. It's essential. It's imperative that we base our door knocking on what works. We look at the big picture. If it's working, let's keep doing it. If it's not working, let's adjust. Well, these things are working. In fact, I want you to notice this percentage here. Notice the percentage that talks about door knocking. It's the higher percentage. We usually get that percentage somewhere around the 75, 85% level when we knock doors. In other words, when we bring a new mover basket to your door and we greet you, the number shoots up from the 20s to like 75%, sometimes 80, 83%. Look how easy it is to make a contact from a new mover. I mean, Brent, that's a no-brainer. I mean, if you're not greeting new movers and door knocking new movers, then you're missing out on a very easy way to make a contact. But even when you look at the non-new mover numbers, what do you see? 18, 17, 23, 31, 28%. If I were to say right now, I will send you out the door knock and you'll get an average 25% rate of return, would you go? Now, when we started this lesson, you're probably looking at a 0.01, 0.02, 1%. I can understand why you're discouraged. Maybe it's because you weren't using maybe the best strategy. Be wise as serpents. But if you went the proper training, look what kind of percentages you can get. So if we would send you out and you went to 100 doors, but you got 25 contacts, would you do it again? I think the answer is a resounding yes. And that's what we're teaching at the House-to-House, Heart-to-Heart School of Evangelism. And this lesson is designed to help you and to teach you what Jesus did when he knocked doors. Now, I want you to contact the school if you have questions. You can go to rob@housetohouse.com. Go to our website, evangelism.housetohouse.com. We have a full training curriculum. We'll train your church. We'll provide you individual training, congregational training. We have so many tools. Maybe we can come do this and demonstrate at your congregation. We would love to hear back from you. I hope you'll reach out to us. One goal in this school, we want souls to be saved. To God be all the glory.